Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the cEDH cast. My name is Ian, and not with me this week is my co-host Braden, because I am joined by a very special guest, friend of the show, Matt. Say hi, Matt.
Hey.
On this week's episode, we are going to be talking about the thing that gets us so grumpy, tilting in cEDH. But before we get to that topic, we have a patron shout out. This week's patron is Harry from Moxfield. Harry has been awesome to work with. He is one of the developers of Moxfield, and he does a great job of making sure that site is up and running. We can include the Discord for the Moxfield down below. It's an amazing deck building site. If you want an introduction to the site, Braden did a great video about that. And the fact that Harry has been able to support us as a cast has been really awesome, and we have a really good partnership going on. So we're really happy to be working with them, and hopefully we'll, keep having a great relationship with Moxfield as time goes on. Back to the main topic, we're going to be talking about tilting in cEDH. And Matt, we kind of came up with this topic sort of just talking to one another. It's an interesting topic, right? Because it's a tough thing to go over, because tilting is definitely an individual thing, right? Like,
yeah,
obviously,
it's definitely a personal experience.
Yeah, exactly. So not everyone's gonna be upset by the same things, but I feel like when competition is on the line, people tend to tilt in the same way, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Now, why did you want to talk about this today?
Well, I think it's a lot of it's just I sit there and I sit in a lot of games, and certain things frustrate me that I think probably frustrate other people. But I'm an angry goblin boy, so I tend to get very outwardly frustrated. I know I've called you several times after the game and be like, Ian, you won't believe what just happened or what they did. Why did they do it's some organization that's out to get me.
Right.
But I feel like unless you're some Zen monk, I feel like you're gonna get tilted in this game at some point, just a little bit.
Yeah. And I think it's the nature of cEDH in general that it's more likely to happen, right? Because not only is it, well, with 1v1, right? Everyone's threat evaluation is if your opponent messes up in 1v1, that's good for you, right? Like you only thrive from that. But in this multiplayer format, if your opponent screws the pooch, you can suffer from it, and another opponent can get ahead from it, right? It's definitely unique.
Playing with three other people, three completely different personalities, and you're all it's a free for all. It's a lot, and so
it is, yeah.
A lot of conflicting personalities. People play differently, and you probably you as a person probably have in your head what optimal play is right? Because that's what the idea of cEDH is, right? It's optimal play, playing to the best of your ability, and sometimes you see somebody do something, and you're like,
that was not.
What's going on there?
Yeah.
What has happened?
That was not that.
It is not that thing. Just you're sitting there playing a low interaction deck, and the other decks all are in blue. All could possibly hold something up. And let's say somebody is holding up mana specifically, certain colored mana, they tapped very choicely, and the rest of the table who can interact chooses to get greedy and just play value plays, and you're sitting there like the the conspiracy theorist at the table, pointing to that guy, going, "Hey, what about him? Maybe we should." I'm playing a fucking a Godo deck, or I'm playing a fucking Yisan deck. What do you want? There's only so much I can do.
Yeah. You're like, I only have a certain amount of cards. Yeah.
And then that person goes off and just didn't even have to have any backup for it, because no one else held up interaction. And they're like, where did that come from? And you're like, what do you mean, where did that come from? And your voice gets higher a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I'm high strung. That's probably the case.
That may be the case, but I think you're striking on a real point here, right? Where it's it is easier in the environment of playing in a competitive multiplayer format, where you do get in these situations that cause you to go over the edge, right? So I want to talk about when you get in that environment, when you start to tilt, how do you get out of it, especially if there's something on the line, right? Like a tournament or something like that.
Get out of that, the feeling, or get out of recovering from being tilted?
I know for me personally, when I am tilting, it starts to consume my thoughts. Oh man, I can't believe they made that mistake. That mistake's gonna cost us the game. But how do you take that step back and be all right, but the past is the past, and there's nothing I can do about it. How do you move on, right?
Well, I think just with the idea of how play styles is anybody should probably have this. It's just it's happened now. I'm not changing this. Like
Yes.
the point
Right.
of politicking has gone beyond it's beyond the pale now, and so it's just
Right.
I guess I'm gonna just work with what I've got, even though it's
Yeah.
a shit
Yeah.
sandwich. Like okay, but there's also like decent. There's like tilting that's like funny, bamboozling, or like
Yeah.
bamboozling, or like self tilting. Self tilting's funny because you think you're like this optimal player, and then sometimes you're like, oh wait, I apparently forgot the rules of mathematics and don't know how to add. And
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
1 mana short, or I thought I could pay for that Ristic Study trigger.
Yeah.
I was wrong. I shouldn't have.
Yeah. So when you're in like a tournament setting, do you often find that the tilt is worse or better for you? Because I know personally when there's something on the line, like a title or money even or prizes, like I find that it's so much more intense, right? Because now suddenly like one person's mistake is your opportunities being lessened, and that's tough part about cEDH. Like there's a reason in multi-round tournaments that like 2 wins and like 3 losses can get you into a top 16, right?
Yeah.
Like yeah, I mean, it's tough because the multiplayer aspect of the format.
So might be actually a crazy person, but like when I've been in like actual like playing for like any kind of like money or prize or an actual like entered tournament, I get like a little bit more calm about tilt situations.
Yeah.
Because if I get tilted or demonstrably show that I'm tilted, I think it's information about how I'm playing to like my opponents.
Yeah.
And I try to like keep pretty calm. But that being said, like during like casual games, when I'm just like playing pickup games with like strangers or even people I know, I tend to get a lot more heated. Especially with my friends too, because like
Yeah, well, yeah, with your friends, you can just be like, well, you're a fucking idiot, and then you move on, right?
they should
Yeah.
know better.
And I think that's a thing, though, right? Like I've played against people who have been like, people have told me you're an intelligent person. Why are you making this play? Like it sounds so horrible, but it's like I don't know. Like it's a thing, right? Like if you respect somebody when they make mistakes, you judge them harder, right? Like
Yeah.
doesn't that? Because like I know you and I have gotten into like many arguments mid game where it's I've been like legitimately like
What the
we've
fuck
been mad
did
at
you
each other, but I'm
do?
like it's because I respect you. It's because I respect you that I think you're so stupid right now.
It's because I respect you that I asked you, did your mother smoke crack? Like it's. But like you can't be at a table full of random strangers in a competition and be like, "Are you on drugs?"
I used to do it with Shaper all the time at the LGS because he'd be like, "Oh, I don't know if you're evaluating this threat correctly," and I'd be like, "I'm gonna attack you right now because I'm respecting you."
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not even like that. It's like that kind of situation where like somebody at the table is so good at politicking that they're gaslighting the fuck out of you, and
Yeah,
you're
right.
you're sitting there just upset, and it's like, but no, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, like the threat assessment, like. If you end up doing correct threat assessment, everyone else at the table is like, "You're on drugs. What are you talking about?" And then they're like, "Oh, I guess you were right." And I'm like, "You think?"
Yeah, and
But-
I also find that like when you're playing at like a non-tournament level, right? I don't know if it's just me, but like I want to make sure people get better, especially if you're gonna play with them more, right? Like if you legitimately think like someone analyzed a threat strangely, you're not gonna be like I don't know, I'm not gonna be quiet about it and be like, well, maybe next time they'll be better because I didn't say anything, right?
Yeah.
Like if legitimately like I think someone's a good player and I have no idea why they did something, I'm gonna be like, I really don't think that threat was analyzed correctly there, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
you get into an area I think with like this game or like any game in particular when you go and ask somebody about their decisions, you have to be super tactful or they're gonna get really shitty.
yeah.
There's a real specific way in how to ask it, like make it more polite than it should probably be.
Right.
Because just saying, what were you thinking there? They're gonna be like, oh, what was I thinking? What was I thinking there? I think I was trying to win. I'm like, well, no, I'm like you have to make it understood that like you're just trying to understand the thought process behind it. People in cEDH are very quick to give you their opinions on things. Like, oh,
so
why
true.
aren't you playing this? Well,
Yeah.
that another form of tilt, or just
Yeah.
getting just shitty. Is that what this is devolving into? It's like people telling you about the deck that you're playing competitively. Why aren't you running this?
Yeah.
I
And
don't
they've
know.
seen it like once.
Yeah, like
right.
I don't know why I'm not running that. Maybe you should build all my decks for me. Thank you.
It really is. I was talking about this in the Discord the other day where someone brought it up. It basically the idea that like unless you have an established name, people will question your choices, like period.
I try to be super polite, at least in the games where I'm playing with other people, and I know that I'm not always perfect about that, but like, especially with you, because
Because yeah, you're one of my best friends. So
yeah,
it
yeah.
makes sense.
And so it's very much like, and sometimes people sound like assholes, even though like they're really not trying to be. And so like I try
Right.
to take everything with a grain of salt, but that doesn't mean like after I've had a miserable game where I've sat there doing nothing, because of like what like extenuating factors about how the game went. Like I just sat there dirtling for an hour and a half while Johnny or Spike over there just is like going for it, and then they're like, hey, maybe you should do this thing different, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not like the best time to receive advice. Is after sitting in a really shitty game. And I know these are broad topics, but like it's
Well, it's interesting to talk about, right? It's a problem that's relatively unique to competitive EDH, right? It is, I mean, not tilt in general, but like the fact that so much of your game is reliant on three other independent variables.
I've been in games, Ian, where I play super tight, but like it sometimes it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. That's the other thing. It's
Yeah.
like it, and I mean that's with Magic too, but like it's part luck and part skill, right? And
Right.
like
Right.
the luck part is like sometimes you just get absolutely hosed.
Right. So, for example, you remember the game on the Super League I was playing with Elsha the other day? We got to a point in the game where it had gone to time. People had taken a long time to do their actions. The game was at the last point. And in the second to last turn of turns, someone unlocked somebody in their main phase. And that player was able to win.
Yeah.
Even though, we had spent hours stopping people from winning, and one person just went for it and caused the other three players the game. And it's like, that is a unique problem to this format, and it is tilting at the time, right? Like you could actually, I have my hand cam on the video from that game where you can see me literally face palming so hard.
Yeah. If that hasn't been made into like a GIF yet, I really hope it does.
We'll do a little splice and dice to see if we can get that one out there.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Or like even that game that we sat in, like on the Nexus game, right? And I had a really busted start with that turn 1 Grand Arbiter. And then, turn 2, like I had a bunch of 3 toughness creatures, and you and another player were playing all dorks, right? That was like that was your extra mana sources, right? And the 4th player decides to cast a Pyroclasm, and the only person it benefited was me.
Yeah, who was already in the lead.
Who had already had like an entirely nuts start. That gave me the game.
I don't disagree.
So like, I wasn't tilted because it was good for me. But I can imagine how you and that other player felt, which was like probably a little shitty at the 4th player. And like it's not like he didn't do it intentionally. He thought he was making the best choice based off what he had available to him.
Right.
But sometimes the best action is no action at all.
Yeah. Now, one thing I want to talk about, and I'm very curious in your perspective on this, is the cEDH philosophy in itself as far as like what defines king making, what defines actions that will cause that tilt, right? So things like, for example, I was playing with someone the other day. They had cast a Tainted Pact and removed the majority of win cons from their deck because they needed to like grab a Force of Will to stop someone from winning the game. And they got to the point where they were like, I don't think I can even win here. Like all my win cons are gone, blah, 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 blah. Now, meanwhile, they won the game. I don't know. Like I've literally, when I was playing Flash Hulk, I had every single one of my exile enablers removed from the game, and I had my Oracle was gone, I had my Lab Man was gone, and my Jace was gone. Like I had nothing left in the deck that would just win me the game, right? I still kept playing that game.
Yeah.
Because I was playing against an opponent who was playing like I think they were playing like a Joda deck or something ridiculous like that. So they kept dropping big fat creatures. So I was like, well, whatever, I'll keep taking them with my Gola-Drake and try to kill people with combat damage, right?
Sure, yeah.
And I was like, I have a ton of interaction. I was like, so people get like, I don't know, like there's that weird line, right? Where you're like,
the line is like, I think it's kind of like a feeling thing, but it's also like taking direct actions that directly benefit another player or give them like the ability to win. Or stop someone else from or not interacting to stop somebody else's win when you should. So like let's say we're at turns, right? Mm-hmm. And it's gone past my turn, but I have interaction in my hand, and the 4th player's going for it.
Yeah.
If I choose to not use those counterspells and just let the player after me have it, that's king making. Yeah. Because I had the ability to stop that from happening, and that's the competitive side, right? Is you are playing to win and to deter your opponents from winning.
Yeah. And I think there's nothing wrong. I want to be 100% clear about this. I think there is 0 things wrong with playing to a tie. I think playing to a tie is...
It happens.
It happens. And in 90% of the time, in leagues or in games worth points or in tournaments, a tie is worth more than a loss.
Yeah, and that league we played in Philly, one of the games I had was a tie.
Yeah.
Like it went to turns, and then he's like, well, I'm going to present a lock. I'm like, yeah, but you don't have a winning game.
Yeah, you're not winning. You're locking us out.
I'm not giving you a win for creating a locked board state, like or a locked game. I'm like, you didn't win. You're not presenting a win
exactly.
in the allotted amount of turns.
Yeah. So, for example, the game I was talking about where I knew I had, because my commander wasn't on the board, I was playing Elsha, right? And I was like, if I get Elsha, I have an Enlightened Tutor in my hand, but if I go for it now, I know my opponents have all their mana up because they're all trying to go off on their next turn. So if I go for it now, I'm just going to hand the game to somebody. So what I did with that Enlightened Tutor was I got a Curse Totem, because it stopped the person who was trying to go off with Breya with infinite mana.
Yeah.
And there was a food chain deck, which obviously like doesn't use infinite mana to win the game, but it uses it to play the dorks that get them to the win. And there was also a Thrasios deck, which was activating Thrasios. And I'm like, I'm just going to stop them trying to go for it. Right, yeah, exactly. It was a free from the real Thrasios deck. And I'm like, yeah, I definitely want a Curse Totem here. And that's playing for the tie. But I don't think in any world that that's not what you want to do, especially if a tie is worth something in the end of the tournament, right?
No, yeah. And that's always hard to see it, like, I think when you're playing competitive games casually, but, like, I'm not the world expert on getting upset during,
Yeah.
But, like, I've been upset a lot. I find that drinking helps. People are like, oh,
you do have a notorious habit of having a couple sips during a tournament.
a couple sips?
Yeah, well, I was trying to be generous, but
This isn't an advocacy for, like, drinking. It just turns out that alcohol, takes my, really high-strung
takes a little
brain
edge off.
And calms it the fuck down. And I start, just acting based off knowledge that I have instead of overthinking my decisions. And I just start playing things.
Yeah.
And it turns out every time I've gotten a little bit tipsy during a tournament, I've done extremely well. I don't want to correlate the two because I don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but like,
yeah.
Coincidence? I think not.
You're a practitioner of whatever the cEDH equivalent of drunken fist is. No, but I think you're like, all joking aside, like the drinking is like not actually the end goal here, but the overthinking is like a thing, right? And I think this actually does help with tilt, and it's sort of the same,
right? Like, me, I spend like 80 hours in the tank.
Yeah, we all do, right? Like sometimes I literally will stare at my hands so much I'll forget. I'll be like, all right, if I go this, I can grab my combo piece and win the game. And then your opponent's like, yeah, but dude, there's a null rod out, and you're like, oh, fuck me, I didn't even like, I wasn't even looking, right?
Yeah.
Because you get so in the tank. So I guess this is more of a lesson of like mentally stepping back and being like,
don't drink to play cEDH is not.
Yeah, that's not our. I don't think the
like,
lesson we're going for here. Right.
No.
But what are some things that help take off the edge, right? When you're having fun, obviously, like being there with friends, right? Like, I know you and I are huge proponents of like just being a shitlord, and I don't mean that in a way of like be an asshole to people, but like the whole point is, right, this is still, even in a tournament setting, it is hard to play a multiplayer format and not want to be social, right? Even like, for example, the first round of the DDM event we did in Philly, I was at the same pod with Ernesto, and from the 99 to be clear, and it was hilarious, and we were having a great time, and the whole time we were all playing super well, we were all playing great, but the first time we all saw a Trickbind stop a Thassa's Oracle, the whole table almost fucking flipped over because we were celebrating so much, right? Like, it was hilarious, and we were all like, oh, like, making like the stupid air horn noises, like burr, burr, burr. I don't know, there's a certain atmosphere I think you have to strive to create if you're playing in a multiplayer format,
But sometimes that doesn't always translate, like, because if you're playing with strangers and like stuff like that. And I think I enjoy games with people that I know.
Sure, I mean, I think that anyone would really.
I'm allowed to do my two favorite aspects of Magic. I get to play hyper competitively to a ridiculous degree, but I also get to be a goon with my friends and make memes, and that's like, I think was like a while back, I don't know if it still is like, was a preconception about cEDH is that like, oh, it's not fun. I'm like,
bruh, yeah,
what do you mean?
Yeah,
it's the same thing, but like the cards are more expensive, and like the lot, like people are playing in a different manner, like they're playing to win. I'm still gonna make dick jokes. Like, it's still Magic.
All I can think about is the first game where you and I went full goblin at Panda that one night, where I had a Heuristic Study and a Mystic Remora, and you had a Mystic Remora, and anytime anyone played a single spell, we were like, you gotta pay for that! Just like...
Well, so Ian, I don't think like your viewers know what that means, right? Like, with the full goblin.
Yeah,
voice, right?
I guess,
so,
to be clear, anytime we do that voice,
example,
it's going goblin, right? Like, that's...
There's a voice that Ian and I do that is, when I first met him, he had made the voice, and then I knew that we were going to be best friends because I immediately responded in kind.
Yeah.
And then it just evolved into us being like these goblin
Yeah.
men who
Dude,
said like
it's fun to
just say awful
shitpost,
shit to
man.
each other. Oh yeah, and we say awful shit like, "Oh, are you really gonna play that fucking Mystic Remora?" Like
Yeah,
that
wow,
kind
you're
of
so
thing.
smart.
Wow, that card's definitely not toxic.
Yeah. And I honestly, games when we do that, those games can go so terribly, and I will not get
Oh
tilted,
yeah,
you know?
oh yeah, no, because I'm having a blast. Like literally, we were not that game we played. We were not winning
Oh,
by
yeah, I was doing terrible. I
any
think I
stretch of
drew
the
like 30
imagination.
cards and did not have a single win condition, and I was losing my mind, but we were having a great time and having fun together, right? That was the
No,
important
yeah,
part.
and it's the friends you make along the way. No, I don't.
Shut up. I like there's a difference between playing in a pod with people you want to play with. You all know you're on the same level as far as like intellectual understanding of the game. Like I think the Super League has actually spoiled me a little bit, right? Because
Sure.
I genuinely believe that everyone who's participating in that is a pretty damn decent Magic player, right? Like I think everyone there is like competent and good at what they do. So sitting down across from them.
Are they paid?
No, yeah, yeah. I'm sponsored this week, but no. But you know who is paying us, Matt? TCG Player. So if you're gonna pick up TCG Player cards, anyways, you might as well use an affiliate link to support your favorite cEDH podcast. So pop on down in the link below and shop there.
Also, like another thing, like for in terms of like the social aspect of playing CDH, like sometimes like playing with people that you do not like as human.
Yeah, that is a thing, right? So that's interesting because I've talked to Brayden about this before, right? Where he legitimately is. This is one thing I find very interesting that he does. Where if he has people he genuinely just does not enjoy playing with, he will just kind of say it. He'll be like,
Yeah,
"I just don't think we should play together," and that's okay. And people get like
yeah.
real upset, and he's like, "No, no, no, no. I have no bad feelings towards you. I just don't think we should play this game together." And it's so fucking funny. Like he just does it. He's like, "It's okay. We don't have to do this." So I'm gonna go back to something you talked about earlier because you said you do have a good amount of experience being the low interaction deck at the table because you
Yeah,
started out playing cEDH with Yisan, right? And
which was super viable back.
it's okay, buddy. You don't have to defend your choices. And to be fair, you were told that this would be a good deck to start on.
Played so much Esau.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then you moved to Hullen as your other like main deck, right? That's sort
Like,
of
because it was a financial component. Because I'm, superficial enough that I want to play with real Magic cards,
yeah.
but poor enough that I can't, buy into like, a $6,000 deck.
Yeah, yeah, it's not easy. Once again, proxies, bam bam. Anyways.
At some point, you're going to want to play in a tournament that might not
Yes,
allow
I totally
proxies.
agree. But being the low interaction deck, right? I mean,
It's definitely something I am familiar with
Yeah.
as a betting. Like that's.
and I think
And to be fair, I played the highest interaction, non-interact. You know what I mean? Like Yisan's pretty fucking interactive
for a deck without
for
counter
a
spells,
mono
yes,
for a
yes.
mono green deck.
So when you're in that spot, and this is kind of goes back to our main topic, right? So like the tilt tends to happen a lot more because I think you mentioned this scenario, right, where you are playing against three people who hypothetically should have answers, right? But then like
Yeah.
hypothetically speaking, two of them greed out and they're like, ah, the Yisan player's got this. And then you look at them and you're like, does the Yisan player have this? Like,
Like, I'm on first three. I'm gonna get a fucking Rex Sage and stop them
yeah.
from casting a Tainted Pact.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, the great. My scavenging ooze isn't gonna do shit against their Thassa's Oracle,
To be
right?
fair, though, we do have a Loaming Shaman on three.
But it's a real thing, right? So like, how did you
Yeah.
because you took that to the DDM event, right? How did you manage those pods? How did you, especially mentally?
Honestly, well, the DDM pod, like that, the DDM games, those were like very. Sushi Hulk hadn't been banned yet, and it's just.
Yeah, it was like right off the presses, right?
And so it was pretty new, and everyone was like a lot of people were playing it. I don't think there was as many as people expected, but I did end up in a pod with 3 Sushi Hulk decks, and it was like walking into a room where 3 people are holding machine guns and they're pointed. But see, the thing is, they're pointed at each other.
Right.
And I walk in and I've got a fucking butter knife.
Yeah, yeah. And meanwhile, you're in the corner sharpening your butter knife, and you're like, "I'll take
Sharpening
my
my
time."
butter knife in, yeah, and then into like a shiv, and then I slit their throats.
After they ran out of bullets, right?
They didn't waste their interaction because a lot of those deck and like it was a Yisan was a very parasitic deck at that time because people weren't running Toxic Deluge or Pyroclasms
Right.
anymore, especially in the like the Sushi Hulk, because they didn't need it
Yeah.
because of how that deck worked and how that deck like could go off.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to just verse unhindered,
Yeah.
and once I got to verse 5, I was like it was over.
Right.
Like I already had I was playing super greedy and I was playing I got like versed one for a fucking Sylvan Safekeeper. All they had was spot removal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they maybe had Chain of Vapor and like that. I was like that's just not gonna cut it.
Yeah.
But like so the tilt aspect, yeah. Like there was instances where I just felt like I've done what I can and hopefully it just gets I can do more things.
Yeah.
But the thing is like you have to be a little bit more self-conscious about like how you're interacting.
Yeah.
And like a very not interactive deck. Like I've never played Godo or something like that.
Right. I think the whole thing is like we've talked about this before, right? You have to be sort of proactive with your voice. And this I think helps. You have to be equally as smart with your opponent's plays, right?
Oh yeah, and you have to know their decks very well,
Right.
so that when you try to politic and bullshit your way into something, you sound intelligent. Because honestly, a lot of the times I can politic very well,
Yeah.
by speaking confidently,
Yeah.
and having no idea what I'm talking about. Like so that's why like I hate being in a pod with you because that shit doesn't fly because you know me.
Because I poke a hole right in the middle of it.
And you're like, he's full of absolute garbage. And so, like, being the confident, loud one is like, remembering that politicking is like definitely, it's just a thing you have to do.
It's a skill. It's tough. Yeah, but I think that helps with reducing bad feelings during a game, right? If you are very vocal about, I think we need this spell to resolve, or this person will win the game, and then they go, oh well, I don't know about this. But if you then immediately go back with, okay, here are the literal facts of this situation. I need you to understand this. Now, if someone hears all your like genuine, well-presented argument and then is like, yeah, I don't want to, then you're probably going to be tilted, right? But if you've done the best in your situation to present your point clearly and to use politics to your advantage, to assess the board state and to use your words instead of your cards, I think you can have a lot of success that way, right? And this is one way we can.
Yeah, and you could definitely avoid getting tilted.
Yeah, if you really genuinely express your opinions more, like
talk to each other.
We've had games where I think, I remember like I was observing a game you played in once and I was like, if you had just harped on him a little more, you totally would have won that game, right? And then you've done the same thing to me, right? And it's interesting that is such a big part of our format, right?
Yeah, or like you bullying everybody into paying the Ristic study, but then it gets to your turn and you're like, I'm just gonna jizz out all these spells.
I did it one time and you've never let it go.
And I'll never forget it. Because it was the most hypocritical thing in the world, and I was like, wow, that was really smart. Nobody else forwarded their board state, and then he just, let somebody draw like 6 cards, and he's like, just looks up and goes,
it was like
it's not
2.
gonna matter.
It was like
because
2.
you basically said the equivalent of that card draw's not gonna matter. And I was like, ugh. Ristic Study does put me on tilt though. It's an amazing card. I'm not gonna say it's not good. Like, I can't say that. But like, remember that time we were playing a game and that one guy was just, I had a Ristic Study out with Holin or whatever, and he let me draw like 15 cards.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to go for it.
Right.
He wasn't deterministically winning. He was digging for answers.
Right.
And I don't know how trying to do that through a Ristic Study,
it's not.
where you're not definitively going to get... Like, if he was going to get there, and, like, it didn't matter, like, those cards I drew, I would have been like, no, let me draw the cards. Let you do you. But he didn't have it.
That's what I think. I think there is a certain type of deck in our format, for example, like versions of like Blue Farm and stuff like that, or like these very aggressive decks. And I'm not saying Blue Farm specifically because that one can actually grind pretty well, but there are like Turbo Nas decks, right, that people build to be like, I am all in on this strategy. And this is actually something when Braden was first working on Paco, actually we had something very similar where he spent like 3 spells into a Ristic Study, and I was like, that person ended up winning the next turn, and I was like, did you really need to cast Paco that turn? Like, really? But he has a very proactive, aggressive strategy, right? The same thing with people who are like trying to whip out a Turbo Adnaz, right? If you have a Ristic Study or a Remora on the field when those decks are trying to do their thing, you do run the chance of someone playing greedily and fizzling and then just giving away the game. Back when Sushi Hulk was legal, I was playing in a pod with Shaper. Someone was playing Storm, and then another person was playing something. I don't remember what the third person was playing. But Shaper took his turn, did just, normal stuff, right? And the next person was playing like Kess Storm. and attempted to storm off into my Rhystic Study. And I was on Flash Hulk, right? So, like, not a deck you want to give cards. And he gave me, like, I think it was like 8 cards. And he was like, just missed it. Pass the turn. And I was like, okay, Flash Hulk with protection? Like, that was it. That was the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I remember everyone else at the table was like, okay, like, congratulations, you gave that person the win because you went for it when you shouldn't have. And I think that's definitely one of the most tilting scenarios I think people can, when someone goes for it ill-advised and they're like, I'm playing to my out, right? Like, you're not.
And then you say that, but like, no, you just got greedy and you wanted to see if you could get it.
Right.
But like, I'll be playing Hullen and I'll go for it. And, like, definitely not have any kind of substantial backup.
Right.
And I've gotten there.
Yeah.
Not as many times as I haven't gotten there.
Don't get me wrong. There are genuinely scenarios where you have to say, like, if it gets to the next turn, I will not have an opportunity again because of the way the board is playing out. Like, say you're playing against a stacks deck and you know for some reason that they're about to drop a stacks piece that, like, literally takes you out of the game, and you don't think you have a way to recover because your hand is, like, hot garbage or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. There are scenarios, I mean, don't play decks like that, but there are scenarios where you do have to go for it, right? And that's not exactly what we're talking about. It's when people have clear answers. Like, so if that card I was talking about is already on the battlefield, then you act patiently. Because, like, when you were talking about, Matt, with the Isan thing against the 3 Flash Hulk decks, if you go for it in that game, you're going to get punked. However, you let the 3 Flash Hulk decks hold guns to each other's heads, and now suddenly they're fighting over something, and then you as the Isan player just go, no, I'll play a dork. I'll get it. I'll verse for 1. I'll verse for 2. All right. Sometimes just because your deck can explode doesn't mean you should. But I think a lot of the sort of idea I'm getting out of this conversation is that there is a lot of ways in which having a competitive environment can lead to the tilt mentality, which we were talking about, right? And to which your play gets worse, your head gets so focused on the past that you can't move on. But we've outlined also, like, a number of ways to really get past it. Like we said, finding things to take your mind off of it, not getting so ingrained in focus, explaining what you're trying to do in a game, talking about your plays with the people at your pod, a lot of stuff like that. And I think a lot of it allows you to take what could be a really negative aspect of the game and make it better, right? Because, for example, the proactive talk thing, not only are you avoiding tilt, but I guarantee you're winning more games when you're politicking and being very open about what you see as a threat at the board state, right? If you're mentioning stuff that you see as a threat, you're never going to be like, man, it's so frustrating that no one saw that. Because if you're like, I see this is a thing, you guys should also see this, right? You're going to avoid that tilt entirely, and you're probably just going to have better results as a player. Because if people are answering your opponent's threats appropriately, they're going to create board states where you have the advantage to win more, right?
Yeah. And, like, for some of, like, the pettier tilts, like, you choose how you respond to things. You sat down to have fun.
Yeah.
Like, just keep that mentality. I know, like, it's competitive. Understand, like, we're playing, the highest form of cEDH we can, super tight, just super optimized plays, everything, right? Decks, all of it, great. But, like, at the end of the day, in my brain, I'm like, it is just a game.
Yeah.
And so, like, getting super upset, it's not going to make anything better for me.
Right. I think that's a really good way to wrap up this discussion. At the end of the day, everyone is there to have a good time. And I think keeping that in mind, even at the times when you're competing as hard as possible, even in a tournament setting, cEDH is yet to be at the point where you're competing for thousands of dollars. So have fun, enjoy the time, and get to meet people, get to know people. It's a really great social experience. It's a great time. Enjoy the good parts of it, right?
That's how I met you.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the cEDH Cast. Thanks for coming on, bud.
Thanks for having me.
Have an amazing week. Bye.